So welcome. Nice to see so many people out this morning. Beautiful morning. Finally, some sunshine. It's great to see so many people registered for today. I think they said about 350 people registered for today's PD Day, which means it's something we've missed as a college. And so what a great program, too. I look at all the various people that step forward to do workshops, to talk about what they do at the college. And one of the things I hear all the time in the college that I really don't know what that department does. And I don't know what this person does. And this is a great opportunity to make connections. And that's what today is about, making connections and learning what we do as an institution. And we have so many talented, bright people here that work here. And today's, a lot of those people have stepped forward for all of us to learn more. And by making connections, we learn more about ourselves, we learn more about the industry we're in, we learn more about the world at large. And we all become better educators and better able to support the students who attend here. So I'm thrilled that you're here. I want to say a big thank you to Sandra Bennett and Mary Blanchard and the team that put this together. Congratulations, job well done. Where are they? And they must have spoke very, very nice to Nevzat, because this is a big budget thing. We have lanyards and name tags and food and drinks, so they really went big budget here. So congratulations. I noticed Nevzat's not here, so he must be really feeling the pain. But maybe he'll show up. So I am, again, happy that so many people are participating today. I'm looking forward to the workshops. And, you know, today this room's also set up for a ceremony for our Center for Success. It's a day that we celebrate high school students who attend Durham College and do dual credits. And it's a celebration of their success coming here to Durham and completing their high school and making their way on through pathways to college and university. So we're going to have lots of celebrations, lots of information today. They gave me some notes to follow, but I never follow the notes, but I think I got the highlights. So I just want to say enjoy your day, and I want to welcome Jennifer Gibbs, Manager, Employee Development and Wellness, who will introduce our keynote speaker. Have fun today, folks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. And thanks to all of you for attending Durham College's Professional Development Day, Making Connections. I think today's going to be a great day. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dan Zayance. Dan is a Toronto-based professional communicator and social media expert with more than 8 years of experience representing some of Canada's largest media brands. He's also the author of Follow the Leader, Lessons in Social Media Success from Higher Ed CEOs. It is our pleasure to welcome Dan here today. Please help me in welcoming Dan Zayance to Durham College.
Thank you. Just get this started here. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And thank you, Don, for the introduction. Actually, one of the last times that Don and I spoke was he served as one of the interviewees for my book, for Follow the Leader. And I don't know if many of you know this, he's very active on social media and does some really neat things. So if you aren't already following DC, he's not paying me for this plug, by the way. If you're not already following DC_Prez, you might want to start that. But you might not be on Twitter yet. And that's in part what our conversation will be about today. So why don't we get to know social media a little bit? Very appropriate that the name of today's event is Making Connections, because that really is at the heart of what social media is all about, in particular social media engagement. So today, you know, a lot of people will tell you that they have, you know, the answers to what social media is all about. And yes, the name of today's presentation is Social Media Answers. But you know, I just want to make it clear that, you know, I'm no guru. I do research social media. It's a space that I feel very familiar with. But I think anyone who tells you that they have all of the answers, that they have 100% certainty of what social media is or what it's becoming, what it's turning into, what it's evolving into, you know, I would err on the side of caution in terms of believing those people, because it's a constantly changing medium, constantly changing platforms, constantly changing normative behaviors in terms of how people use social media. So, you know, a lot of the things that I'm going to share with you today are less about, what is the latest fad, what is the new social network that everyone needs to be on, and it's more actually coming down to some of these common sense things to consider in terms of best practices in how you engage on social media. But I also acknowledge that we have a whole range of knowledge levels when it comes to social media in this room. You've got, I'm sure, folks who are just really steeped in this space, really well versed, and then I'm sure you've got, the people who will admit to being beginners, who are just sort of have knowledge of social media on the periphery. So I'm going to try and cater to that mix of people, the folks who are sort of the beginners and the folks who are more advanced, and hopefully we come to a happy middle ground. So, the areas we're going to cover off, we'll spend 90% of the presentation talking about me. That's the intro and the about me portion. I'm from Toronto, I'm egomaniacal, so that's how that's going to go. We'll try and put social media in context, the key terminology, just what you guys need to know about social media from a higher education perspective, some of the key terminology certainly, but also some of the key ideas that are prominent on higher ed campuses across North America today. We'll talk about the social media community specifically as it pertains to the things you really care about at Durham College, whether it's retention or recruitment or student success, not in that particular order. I talk to a lot of higher ed CEOs, so the priorities sometimes range there. We'll really get to this key question of, is social media for you? I grapple with this question from a lot of different perspectives, whether you're a leader, a senior leader in higher education, whether you're a professor. Is it necessary for you to be on social media? So we'll get to the answer to that question, and that really will differ for a lot of people in the room. We'll go through, obviously, the best practices. That's a really key nugget here. And we'll also go through an activity that I think by the end of this activity, you guys will really have a sense of whether you should be on social media or not, how to identify what goals you want to achieve in your social media engagement, how to identify who you want to communicate with, and even maybe what social media tools or platforms or channels you want to use if you do want to go down that road. And we'll make time for Q&As. And you guys are actually going to get this deck by the end of the day if it hasn't already been shared with you. That resources section is just a sort of a variety of different links that you might find helpful when you review the deck. So again, let's spend 90% of the presentation talking about me. I'm a strategic advisor and a consultant. But I should also really reveal this. I don't know if this will result in a West Side Story standoff. I work at Seneca College in Toronto in their Strategic Planning and Public Affairs Department. And so I really do feel as though I have a great understanding. I also have taught at the college as well. I really do feel, and I've been a member of the support staff, I feel like I've got a really great understanding of the different perspectives that you folks bring to social media, and certainly that you bring in your own jobs day to day and trying to balance your own day-to-day responsibilities. Then the idea for some of you of adding social media to that mix might be a bit daunting, but we'll address that later. Again, work at Seneca College, have researched social media. I'll tell you sort of just very quickly about the origin of how I became a social media researcher per se. Have had the chance, you guys are actually one of my, I think you're my second Canadian audience that I've had the chance to present to. The rest of my presentations have been at conferences sort of in the US and overseas. And as mentioned, I'm the author of Follow the Leader. So what is Follow the Leader? How did we get here today? So this is a picture of Dr. Santa Ono. He's a transplanted Canadian. He's the president of the University of Cincinnati. This is the best photo I could find of Dr. Santa Ono, his most professional looking headshot. No, this is a photo he tweeted out probably two years ago now. He was involved in a charity fundraiser. He was shaving his head to raise money for cancer research. And this was one of the first photos I found of Dr. Ono. It was before I had started researching social media and certainly how higher ed leadership uses social media. I just found it really interesting that, a senior leader would put out a photo that's just so candid. It doesn't really reflect on him, and it doesn't make him look like the most professional person in the world. Obviously, it's a good thing. It's a good news story. But this was one of the first photos I saw of him online. It was through his Twitter account. And it just struck me that, it was interesting that a senior leader was just being so authentic through their social media engagement, that they were choosing to put themselves out there like that. And the more I looked into Dr. Ono's social media engagement, the more of this authenticity I found. This is a university president who puts out, will share his favorite song lyrics through the course of a day, will share pictures of his family, on family trips, will take pictures of himself, cheering a bit like a dork at his team's, sporting events, and just really puts himself out there on social media and really makes an effort every day to engage with a whole slew of stakeholders at his institution, whether they're students or faculty or other senior leaders. He makes an effort every day to reach out to those stakeholders. So, and that's not so different, not just because he's in the room in the front row, not so different from your president, who also engages in that kind of behavior through his Twitter account. So this is super small. Wasn't sure what the screen sizes would be, so we might run into a few situations like this today. This is an outtake from President Ono's Twitter account. And it's also from a few years ago. It's also one of the first tweets that I saw that really made me want to research what he was all about. So he puts out a tweet: University of Cincinnati students raised $12,000 to buy motorized wheelchair for disabled incoming student Sarah. I'm so proud. Shares a YouTube link to a video about that story. Sarah responds on Twitter, President Ono, your donation made it possible. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. They used the hashtag hottest college in America, which is a hashtag that President Ono coined himself, and it went spectacularly viral. People know the University of Cincinnati, certainly in Ohio and in the US, as the hottest college in America. You can assess for yourself whether that speaks to their academic credentials and their commitment to student success. And then Santa Ono responds to Sarah, your story resonates with me. As I had neurological problems in my 30s, I'd like to meet you and welcome you to UC. Just that personal touch, that the fact that he's sharing the serious medical issues that was a good audio moment. The serious medical issues that he was experiencing in terms of his own life, just revealing that side of himself really spoke to, again, this candor, this authenticity that is certainly engaging on social media enabled him to do. Something he couldn't do through email, something he couldn't do through a press conference, something he might be able to do through an interview, a candid one-on-one interview with a reporter. But he wouldn't be able to demonstrate that student connection. That would be a connection between him and the reporter, right? Anyway, everything about what Dr. Ono did and the fact that he was Canadian struck me as really, really neat, really, really interesting. It made me want to research how, in particular, senior leadership at higher ed institutions use social media. How is it changing the way they communicate? How is it fostering connections with the key stakeholders that senior leadership, and certainly I think this applies to faculty, to administrators, to support staff, your key stakeholders are students, they are your colleagues, they are a whole slew of different people at your institution and your surrounding community, and social media is enabling people to form, again, making connections, let's bring it all together, to foster these really incredible connections in ways that we haven't been able to previously do. So again, I talked about today being sort of a cross-section, addressing a cross-section of knowledge levels when it comes to social media, and I think this will be helpful even for folks who might have an idea in their mind of what social media is and what it's all about. So let's just start at the very highest level. What is social media? If you go to the dictionary definition, I'm going to just remove this. It'll be like stand-up comedy hour, the improv or something. So the dictionary definition: websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. So that's great and somewhat helpful, but does it really get to, does it mean anything other than the words that are on paper? The way I see social media is sort of this breakdown. One, it's everywhere. Certainly the vast majority of your students are using social media. Major media outlets, minor media outlets, mainstream, non-mainstream, brands, large and small, celebrities, large and small. Across every aspect of our society, social media has made inroads, and it is being used across a variety of different channels, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. There are thousands of them, and we'll get through, we'll go through to the most popular ones in a couple of moments. It's everywhere. And so, let's find out why is it everywhere? Why are people so drawn to social media? And we're going to talk about that in this presentation. It gives everyone a voice. I'm sure you guys have heard, this notion of social media democratizing, for better or for worse, in a lot of cases, it's given everyone a voice. Whether it's a student who is, pardon the, colloquial kvetching about, their experience, in your class, whether it is someone complaining directly to Dawn about, the lack of a working vending machine in the cafeteria. There are a whole range of ways that people are using social media, not just the complaining. Sometimes it is, again, to share personal stories, things that they wouldn't share in person, face-to-face with someone. People are sharing their deeply personal experiences, like we saw with Dr. Ono, on social media, and it really has given everyone access to a mass audience, which is, again, it's an opportunity, certainly, but it's also a challenge. And it's we'll get to this question of necessity. Sure, it's great to have access to an audience, but if you're not delivering compelling information or helpful information or useful information, maybe you shouldn't have access to that mass audience. And, I'm not going to answer whether people should or shouldn't have access to social media in this presentation. I think that's something you have to decide for yourself, whether it's a road you want to go down. Certainly, it's about making connections, whether they're personal connections or professional connections. A large number of academics are using social media to position themselves. Frankly, admittedly, I've tried to use social media to position myself as a thought leader in the space that I consider myself to be an expert in. And a whole slew, a new generation of thought leaders. Again, some of them are, self-made, and it's questionable whether the credentials they have really actually make them thought leaders in reality or not. But certainly legitimate, very, very legitimate thought leaders are using social media to share their expertise like never before, to find new audiences, to tell their story or to tell their institutional story through their social media accounts. And that really gets to this last point. Social media really is about sharing your story. And more than anything, not just doing it in a one-way direction, not just, it's different from a press release. It's different from an article. It's really different from any other form of communication other than a conversation. That's really the closest parallel, because it really, when it's done most effectively, is happening in a two-way style. It's about two-way engagement. That's when it's done most effectively. Sharing your story, but then listening to what people have to say in response and making a committed effort to respond to those people. So again, some stats that I'll probably speak to because this font doesn't necessarily translate well. You probably see some of the biggest numbers here. This is just global context on social media. 2.08 billion users worldwide on different social media platforms. so this is an interesting one, only 29% of all the social media accounts in the world are active. 1.65 of those 2.08 billion users are accessing social media through their mobile devices. These are numbers from Sprout Social, which is a social media communications company. They have a social media platform and paid sort of tracking and monitoring service. And these are numbers from January 2015. So that's a huge quantity of people who are accessing social media through their smartphones. And then of the people who have active accounts, 23%, again, accessing social media platforms through their mobile devices. Other small fonts here for me to walk over and tell you about. These are the most active social media countries in the world. Do you guys want to take, since you can't necessarily read this, do you guys want to take a guess as to the most social, don't try and squint. Do you want to take a guess as to the most, I'm hiding it, the most social media active country in the world? It's Argentina. They spend more than 4 hours a day on social media on average in Argentina. We spend a meager 2 hours per day, 2.1 hours per day in Canada. The average person around the world spends more than 2 hours, 2.4 hours on social media every day. The Americans, 2.7 hours on social media every day. This is has already become, certainly more than television, though I don't know if I have the numbers to back that up, at least on par. This is becoming the communications channel. When I was interviewing the various presidents that I interviewed for the book, it was actually part of my master's thesis. One of my master's colleagues is in the audience today. So when I was researching this topic, interviewing the presidents, one of the presidents I spoke to talked about this idea of that necessity of being on social media. They hadn't seen these numbers about how many hours the average person spends online or on social media channels, but they talked about why would you knowingly ignore a communications channel that is so actively used, certainly in the role of a senior leader like a university or college president. Why would you knowingly disregard a communications channel? It would be like knowingly disregarding email, at least in this person's view. It would be like knowingly disregarding the telephone. It's just another communications tool in your arsenal. Why would you knowingly disregard it? And especially when you look at these numbers about how long people are using it per day, there could be a compelling argument to be made to be in this space if you aren't already. Maybe you're already in this space and you sort of know that, yeah, I've seen it in my students. I've seen it in my friends and colleagues. People are really deep into the social media space. So I'm going to try and balance out so I'm not so on the political spectrum here. So these are the biggest social media platforms in the world. Number one, you won't be surprised by, it's Facebook. But number 2 and 3, I'd be curious how many people in the room have heard of. QQ and QZone. How many, by raise of hands, how many of you have heard of QQ or QZone? These are the second and third most popular, just a couple of hands. These are the second and third most popular social networks in the world, and that's because they are Chinese-based social networks. So if you imagine, the Chinese population, I don't know where they ranked. Where did China rank on time per day? Oh, they were relatively low, 1.7 hours per day. Anyway, QQ and QZone, they are Chinese-based social networks. They're the second and third most popular in the world. Talking about billions of users here. And then you've got WhatsApp, and at the 4th slot, Facebook Messenger. This is as of, again, January 2015. WeChat, a lot of people haven't even heard of WeChat. Google+, Skype. So what they're also blending here, by the way, are things we traditionally see as social networks, websites like Facebook, Twitter, but they're also including these instant messaging services that people are using. I'm sure you've seen your students using things like WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a hugely popular instant messaging service that allows friends to privately message one another. We'll go through some of the bigger social networks in a moment. I just wanted to give you guys a sense. At the bottom of the list, Snapchat is a hugely emerging network, and there's some fun, interesting ethical questions that have emerged on some of these newer social media networks around people putting the worst kind of vitriol out there in the public sphere and not necessarily being held to account for it because of the anonymity of some of these new social networks. So again, a variety of skill levels here in the room. I just wanted to go through some key terminology. You've got followers or following, and that's the act of committing to monitoring a social media account that you find interesting or relevant. A follower refers to someone who's making that commitment, committing to following you on social media. A like, everybody, it's becoming sort of common nomenclature, not just in the social media world, and it's not, the traditional usage of the word like, it's the social media act of indicating that you support a particular user's content, to like something, an image or video on Instagram or Facebook. A handle, is a social media username. Their account name is their handle, their nickname. A hashtag, it's a searchable keyword that is preceded by a number sign, and it enables social media users to find content that they're interested in more easily. A retweet is on Twitter. It's the act of sharing content that's posted. Don retweeted a tweet I put out this morning. It's the act of sharing content that's posted by another user, and it's through your account. Again, you'll have a chance to look at these more closely when you get your hands on the deck, if you're interested. The social media feed or timeline is the stream of content that's emanating from your own social media account. So I have photos and videos and text messages on my Twitter feed. And then when something goes viral, I'm sure we've all heard this term before, it really refers to the phenomenon of a story or a comment or a message or a video or an image being shared through a social network and then becoming widely popular across sometimes multiple social networks, not even just the one that it originated on. And this can happen in a matter of minutes or hours or days. And this notion of things going viral is in particular, when you're talking about the power of social media, I think one of these key ideas that news and ideas and content can travel so fast, so far, like never before, really. The major social media players in Canada, so we showed you the global context. Again, this list for many of you might not be too surprising, but I bet there are some names maybe at the bottom that you might be a little bit surprised by, or you might not have even heard of, or you've heard of it, but you're not 100% sure what it is. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Tumblr, WhatsApp, Vine, Snapchat, and Yik Yak, and there are certainly a bunch of others used in Canada, but those are the top players. And so what I do here, again, for some of you, this might be painful and it might, be rehashing, but let's just go through what these are. Let's just, just so that we're all clear. Facebook, the most popular social network in the world, founded on the concept of sharing news, content, images, links, video, and information with your community of friends. What makes often, a Facebook user successful is their willingness to share personal information, to be authentic, and again, they're doing this not just with text-based content, they're often sharing a whole range of different content, whether it's images, articles, videos, and in particular, I try to add these sort of recommendations at the bottom of each of these little screenshots here, is you really want to choose this tool if you're committed to two-way engagement. This is a really important, I think, moment to just pause and think about what that means. I think all of us have experienced this, you know, we're so deep into the social media sort of world now that I'm sure you've experienced, you know, social media accounts that just put out content. You know, they'll just put out links to things. They'll just, you know, it's not about a two-way conversation. And I really actually, based on my own research, based on my own observations, I think I really question the value of engaging in the social media space if you're just going to be putting out content but not engaging or listening to what people have to say in response to the content you're putting out there. And Facebook is one of these tools where if you're just going to be sharing links, if you're not going to be actively listening to what your followers have to say, the people who like your content, it might not be the space for you. You might not have the success, you might not achieve the objectives you have in mind. Twitter, similarly, a two-way engagement tool. It's often called a microblogging platform because of, you know, many people know this, the 140 character limit on the messages you can put out on Twitter. It's been adopted by brands and individuals around the world, media outlets certainly, and what it really does is it enables individuals to instantaneously share content, again, whether it's text or images or videos, publicly, immediately, all around the world. Anyone can see what you put out on your Twitter account. There's no sense of privacy unless you create a private Twitter account where only your followers can see your content and you approve who each follower is. But even then, you know, nothing in the social media world is private. It will find a way to become public, and has happened in several instances, in embarrassing ways in some cases, to very, you know, public individuals. You know, if you are a Twitter user, and I've experienced this, and I've sometimes felt overwhelmed by this, is that, you know, followers expect consistent and compelling content from the accounts that they follow. So if they start following you, you'll quickly notice that people will unfollow you if you're not just consistently delivering meaningful and up-to-date information. And that's, at times, a lot of pressure to feel. You know, like, who has time to just be sitting, you know, in a committed way? I have a 9-month-old daughter at home. I certainly don't have that much free time to be sitting and coming up with great content to be putting out daily. But some people do it incredibly well and have had incredible success in terms of their followers and gaining a loyal following on various social media networks, including Twitter. Again, very much about two-way conversations on Twitter and gaining traction in that space. LinkedIn, the professional social network, really the most popular business and employment networking site in the world, invitation-based only social network. You know, you'll see this tool employed by individuals, by brands. I'm sure many of you in the room are on LinkedIn. And, you know, different social and sort of normative behaviors on this particular network versus, say, a Twitter or Facebook. You know, there's an expectation that you will position yourself as a thought leader. You're not going to be sharing what you had for lunch or dinner or your family photos through your LinkedIn profile. It's also, you know, known as the place where, you know, people are increasingly making employment decisions, you know, whether you're going to get hired, considered for a position or not, based on your LinkedIn profile, whether you have one or not. If you're applying for a communications position or something relating to the web or social media, if you're not on LinkedIn, it could speak to a level of being out of touch. You know, it's a consideration that we never had to worry about even maybe 5 years ago. So, you know, the world is changing. Social media has changed, you know, our personal lives, the way we communicate with our friends, but it's very much changed our professional lives. The fact that, you know, even by the very fact that I'm here today presenting to you about social media, which originally started as a social platform for friends and you know, and just, you know, social connections to engage with one another. YouTube, the most popular video sharing website in the world. You know, what we're finding with, you know, the most successful and compelling videos is they're short, you know, high production value, anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes. You know, Often the most successful videos are from users who do a really great job of acknowledging the comments or feedback they receive from their users. Again, speaking to that notion of the two-way engagement. And what YouTube has really done, and there's so many, I don't know if there are so many, but there have certainly been notable success stories of how YouTube has democratized access to mass audiences. Musicians, actors, across the spectrum of professions, people have been able to make names for themselves by putting out really compelling and interesting content on YouTube. And by the fact that it is searchable and using certain hashtags and keywords, they are able to get attention they previously would not have been able to. Even the cat videos, my goodness, the incredibly popular cat videos, it boggles the mind. And yet, I looked this up once, what is the most viewed YouTube video of all time? I believe it has, cracked the 1 billion views territory. It is a cat, it is like cats, really cute kittens. So I get it, they're cute, but it's just, also speaks to, certain elements of our society that, may not be the most, refined or intellectual. Anyway, there it is. So the YouTube, I'm sure all of you have had. So now we're a connection to YouTube. So now we're heading into sort of the more fringe social networks. I still say this about Instagram because 90% of Instagram users are under the age of 21, which is big and noteworthy. Are you laughing? Because I'm on Instagram too. Oh, you're in the 10%? Well, there you go. And hey, why not? It's not the exclusive domain of young people. And actually an interesting phenomenon, say about Facebook. Maybe some of you have heard about this anecdotally. So Facebook increasingly decreasing in popularity among millennials. And according to recent surveys, part of the reason for that is that their parents and grandparents are increasingly on Facebook, and they don't want to be monitored. And so they move to these anonymous or private social networks, actually in part, to move away from us. And I actually even say us to include universities and colleges. Because we have become, as institutions, so aggressive at reaching out to prospective students that they're trying to get away from these marketing messages in some cases. They're trying to go to their own private networks where it's just their friends and it's guaranteed to only be their friends. So that's an interesting turn of events too. Instagram, image and video sharing social media platform, one of the most popular among millennials and younger demographics around the world. If you're a shutterbug, this is the place for you. But you have to be prepared, again, to be consistent, to be sharing content that is, in some cases, lighthearted, playful. This isn't the, certainly as someone who's worked in PR, this isn't the place to share screenshots of your press releases. This is a place where if you've got really compelling images or video, that's where you put it, through your Instagram account. And you're seeing this across brands, across individuals, celebrities, regular people, all taking to Instagram to share photos of the day-to-day, the things that are going on in their lives. Again, getting to the slightly more obscure, though again, if you're in this space, it's not as obscure as you'd think. Tumblr is a microblogging platform, so there's no character limit on Tumblr like Twitter. Twitter has that 140 character limit. Tumblr is a microblogging platform where you can, I'm sure you've all seen or read or written blogs, and you can do that on Tumblr, but again, the expectation, the sort of normative behavior on Tumblr is very short, very brief, very to the point. You're usually integrating very compelling images and text and videos into your blog posts, so it's not just a long-winded sort of written piece. And again, often what Tumblr users are putting out there is content that is relevant to day-to-day events, things that are trending, in terms of conversation topics. They're usually being written about or discussed on Tumblr. think of it as a blend between Twitter and Instagram, again, with that sort of emphasis on that visual and image-based content, but also having an expectation of some kind of text content as well. Vine, I'm sure many of you or some of you have seen Vine videos that have gone viral on social media. These are, it's a video sharing app, and do I have the length of, well, it's the picture, viral videos that are no longer than, is it 8 seconds? I don't know if any of you guys know, it might be 6 seconds. These are really short videos that people put out there, and the expectation in terms of the videos that you put out on Tumblr, on Vine, is that they are funny and quick and witty and show, a creative side to you that, that just makes these videos stand out noticeably, that you remember, even though it's only a 6-second clip or an 8-second clip, you remember seeing a Vine because it's hilarious, something, football to the groin, I don't know, it's just a variety of different content, some of it higher brow than others, or lower groin. That was a terrible attempt at a joke. Anyway, okay, so then you've got the others out there, the other social networks. You've got Pinterest. Again, some of you, I don't need to go through each of these. Reddit, Google+, and each of these are based on the idea of, in many cases, two-way conversations, not just putting out content without acknowledging or actively listening. Reddit is it's the social network that nobody's heard of, but you've all somehow connected to Reddit. Reddit is where essentially now news media outlets go to find these, the stories that haven't quite made it to the mainstream. So what happens on Reddit is, whether it's a source or someone who's anonymous, someone wants to, a whistleblower in some cases, break a story, they'll share it, content anonymously on Reddit. It will get upvoted if people believe it's credible, if people believe it's real. It will get upvoted by Reddit users. It will climb in terms of the popularity rankings on Reddit, and then mainstream media outlets will often, after a day or a couple days, will pick up stories that have gone viral on Reddit. You've also got this other phenomenon on Reddit called Ask Me Anything, where you've got celebrities and politicians and civil rights leaders and a whole slew of different people who are essentially opening themselves up to Reddit users who are sometimes fickle and rude and crude and respect no boundaries of privacy. And so you have people opening themselves up to these Ask Me Anything sessions on Reddit, and they're being asked these whether it's a civil rights leader or whoever, the politician, they are being asked these incredibly direct questions. It's like, how many sexual partners have you had? What kind of, are you boxers or briefs? Anyway, you've got these, it's just this world opening up where people can reveal these intimate details about themselves, and it's happening in the social media sphere. And I mentioned QZone and QQ, which are, they have a combined 1 billion users in China. So those are, examples of these country-specific social networks. Okay, so social media and higher education. Jen, we're gonna break out of this because I wanted to zoom in quickly at the top here. And this just really speaks to how colleges have identified that millennials are using social networks. It might still be too small, but that's okay. They've identified how millennials are using social networks. Thank you, Jen, I really appreciate it. And you've got 67% of millennials using Facebook to research what college they're going to choose, 62% using YouTube, 48% using Instagram. Now, this isn't how they make their final decision, and it's not the only resource they use in terms of deciding where they're going to pursue their education. Actually, number one is their friends, which is we always know is a reliable resource in terms of making your decisions, is your friends. He said sarcastically. So you've got certainly social networks being used as part of the decision-making process in terms of what institution am I going to pursue my post-secondary education with. These are numbers from the US, by the way, but and we haven't had numbers in terms of Canada looked at least as far as I know, in particular about higher ed decision making and the use of social media. But what this also speaks to is just how millennials, they are digital natives, they are individuals who grew up surrounded by technology, in terms of the devices they're using to research what colleges they're going to pursue. 51% use their laptop, 28% use their smartphone, 21% use their desktop. 60% still visit college websites. They still trust things like college rankings, so half of them still trust things like college rankings. And some of them are just looking for scholarship information as well. That's helping to make their decision making as well. That's actually a big number. 83% are using scholarship information as, can I get a scholarship to this institution? Can I afford to go there? So I think we're ready to go back into the presentation. Thanks again, Jen. And wanted to really, again, put this in perspective for you folks, because I really think this applies to you, whether you're faculty, whether you're support staff, whether you're a senior leader. And it's a quote in social media terms. This is dated because it's from August 2013, and everything moves really fast in this space. But colleges today are serving the most mobile and social customers in the world, many of whom are using multiple mobile devices to network and collaborate. Today, social networking is the most popular use of the web, and that was in 2013. A 2012 study noted that students are choosing colleges with social media clout. So if a particular institution is on social media and very active and does a really good job of engaging, in some cases, based on this particular survey from a couple years ago, high school students were choosing that institution. It influenced their selection. Again, it's not the only influencer, but it was one of the factors. And then, now, you've got that information from 2 years ago. So, as the takeaway, let's invest more resources in social media. But then you've got this new wrinkle in the fabric of as mentioned, the young people who are trying to move to private social networks so marketers can't actually reach them anymore. They don't want marketing messages on social media. They want two-way engagement, conversation, like they have with their friends. I mean, how do you figure that out as a marketer? I don't know. I talked about being a social media researcher, but I don't know if there's a way necessarily to overcome that. At the end of the day, as an institution, if you're communicating with a prospective student, you are still trying to convince them to invest in your institution. Can you ever overcome that relationship of being a institution communicating with a person? It's tough to do. So what are the common uses in higher education? I have to be cognizant of our time too. Common uses of social media in higher education, not surprisingly, obviously marketing and recruitment, customer service, this idea of whether it's an institutional account, the Durham College account, responding to students who have questions or complaints or feedback, whether it's someone like Dawn or someone like Dr. Santaono who's making that commitment to student customer service, sharing news and updates. Certainly you're seeing institutional accounts do that. You're seeing faculty, you're seeing program-specific accounts. And then you're seeing, this, again, this isn't ranked in order of usage, academic and thought leadership. So for the faculty in the room, there is this really neat opportunity to share your expertise through social media with audiences who might not otherwise know about it, who might not have you might not have known that there's a whole community of people talking about your particular area of expertise on social media. That's a really key piece here in terms of listening to what other people are saying on social media, not just putting out content yourself. There's a whole slew of different social media communities at institutions, and I think all of you are part of those in some way, at least one of those communities, and I'll get to that in a moment. And then again, there's the room and the place for higher ed leadership to be on social media too. So I just wanted to quickly show you some neat examples, marketing and recruitment on social media. This is an example from Facebook, from the University of Michigan, a student out there. These are just sort of high-level examples to give you a sense. Are there research opportunities for undergraduates? Prospective student for the University of Michigan, their Facebook account, takes the time almost immediately to respond to that prospective student. Yes, there are research opportunities, there's something for everybody, here's a link to more information, or here's a contact you can reach out to. That customer service piece, this one is a bit of a silly one. So a student in particular talked about the lack of terrace chairs at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, I guess in the main square of the campus. And so the university, again, I think it speaks to how competitive the higher ed landscape, whether it's in Canada or United States, these are increasingly perceived as the differentiators. Well, if one institution is getting back to me and is really focusing on customer service, I might choose them over the institution that is less responsive, that doesn't listen to my feedback, that doesn't listen to the things I share, the critical feedback I share, whether it's founded or not, whether it's fair or not. And so they go through the effort, they post a tweet about the fact that, hey, we've got the terrace chairs, you, Carolyn, you were complaining about the lack of terrace chairs, look, we've done it for you. A relatively meager thing. This really has nothing to do with academic excellence. It is just, I think, speaking, again, to that competitive landscape in which we operate. News and updates. So whether on the left you have a Twitter feed about an institution going through a campus emergency, going through a lockdown, and their Twitter account is, not surprisingly, one of the primary places where they share, hey, we are in a campus emergency, police are currently on the scene, stay indoors, seek shelter. Obviously, there's that use. And then on the lighter end of the spectrum, you've got the opportunity to share, to celebrate your achievements, to celebrate your accomplishments, whether that's on a program level, an institutional level, departmental level. There is that unique opportunity to share the things that you are doing at your department, at your institution, through your various Facebook, various social media channels. That academic and thought leadership piece, we'll talk about this more at the breakout session, which is more of a faculty-focused session. But you have an example of someone, an instructor who creates their own hashtag. I'm sure many of you actually may already do this, who created a hashtag for their course. And so all the conversations that were taking place on Twitter about this particular course, that particular week's lecture, were tagged with this hashtag. So now external people could see the conversation going on in terms of students and faculty from this course, but obviously anyone who was in the course could also see the conversation going on, and it was happening instantaneously. It didn't matter where all the students were. Obviously, they weren't all tweeting one another from their classroom. This is just one of the ways that academics are using social media. This idea of communities. I know this is the case for Durham. I know it's the case at Seneca, a variety of different institutions. Increasingly, you have every department, rightly or wrongly, using social media to try and tell its story. And sometimes it can work strategically and synergistically and seamlessly. And then other times it's just 100 disparate voices telling different stories, not working towards the same goals. And the onus, in a lot of cases, falls on the communications team, the marketing team, to try and rally the troops there, to try and provide direction to these different areas who, in some cases, why would athletics and recreation, as a former sports information director, I guess I shouldn't be saying this, but, why would athletics and recreation, have the expertise to manage a social media account? Or, why would student services or registration? I think people think because it's accessible, because anyone can sign up for an account, because the average age of a social media user is, under 20, anybody can do it. And you're right, anyone can create an account and anyone can post to an account, but can you do it strategically? Can you do it effectively? Can you do it in a compelling way? And only certain people, who might be adept at that can necessarily pull that off. I don't know who exactly those people are. They range, there's a cross-section. But it does take a certain skill level, a certain skill set to operate social media accounts in a strategic way. Certainly there's an opportunity for student government and faculty as well, as we discussed. I want to go back to this idea of connection, just very quickly. Another example from Santa Ono. A parent reaches out to Dr. Santa Ono. It's sort of the opportunity for higher ed leadership, but I think it's across the board too. A parent reaches out to Dr. Santa Ono, says, I hope my son chooses University of Cincinnati, UC, for college, just for the chance that his life could be touched by Pres Ono. That's his Twitter handle. Cincinnati is lucky to have you. And then, obviously it's sort of easy to respond to nice messages like this. He'll respond to the negative ones and the positive ones. And he's, speaks to this parent, thank you, Josh, I would love to welcome him to UC. It's a very special school, and I think this led to a face-to-face meeting as well. Just that opportunity to form these personal, meaningful connections is really there. It's not always going to happen. It's not going to happen every day. For some people, it probably shouldn't even happen. But there are people at institutions who are uniquely positioned to foster these kind of connections, to foster these kind of relationships. And I think it's important to sort of look internally at who those people might be. So again, cognizant of the time, is social media for me? This question of necessity, it's come up for university and college presidents in particular. I've got so much on my plate. I've got so many demands on my time. This probably sounds familiar to faculty as well, to program coordinators, to chairs, to a variety, to support staff. And I think if you're going to ask yourself if it's for you, these are the key questions to consider. The questions are, what goals am I looking to achieve with my social media presence? Pretty intuitive question, but a lot of people don't start there. They sort of start with, let's create an account, let's put stuff out there, and then we'll see what happens. But the first question should really be, what am I looking to achieve through this account? What strengths or information or knowledge or expertise do I have that can translate well to the specific social media platform? Let's create a Facebook page, let's go. But it's just like, okay, but do you have like compelling images or videos? Do you have the capacity to, to record videos and then edit them and, post them to your YouTube channel? On Twitter, do you have the time to consistently, throughout the course of your day, or at the very least, program messages in to go out? There are tools that you can use that can actually program messages to go out on Twitter or various social networks at specific times of day. Do you have access to those? This is all sounding really negative. It's like, well, why am I going to try social media now? I don't have any of these things. I'm not trying to discourage. Who am I hoping to reach, target, engage with? Obviously, asking yourself, these are just important starting point questions. What kind of commitment can I realistically make, time-wise, otherwise, just in general, in terms of the responsibilities you have? And I think in the college context, by the way, the question that's missing here is, do I have the blessing of whether it's my manager or my chair or director? Maybe it's not even just direct permission saying, can I tweet on behalf of the institution? Can I tweet on behalf of the program? It's just, at the very least, giving a heads up, saying, I'm doing this, I'm openly representing myself as an employee or faculty member at Durham College. And I think it's just important, even for we live in this day and age now, even for your own job security, to just say, I'm doing this, I want you to know, I've got a message that says the opinions expressed here are my own. They aren't the opinions of Durham College. I think that's important for anyone who's openly identifying themselves as an employee of a particular organization or institution. So I think these are really key questions, and actually this very much relates to the activity that I think in terms of time, what we'll do is we'll move this activity. If you guys want, you'll get these questions when you get the slide deck as well, if you don't have time to join us for the breakout session. I think these are really the key foundational questions in terms of whether you should pursue social media or not. And let me just get to sort of really what I see as like the key takeaways here. And a lot of this is intuitive, but what it primarily came out of was my conversations with the presidents of various universities and colleges. In particular, what they told me about, what other sort of social media, so-called social media experts have said is know your goals, know your brand. So obviously, that first question around knowing your goals. Also sort of knowing what the Durham College brand is all about if you're going to position yourself as a college employee on social media. if you're going to put out messages that are completely, negative in terms of your institution, your organization, that might not jive with the people you work with senior leaders. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, because again, academic freedom, hugely important. Just need to be aware of the repercussions. Just need to be aware of the environment in which we operate, where anything you put out can be seen. It can be disseminated by any number of different audiences. The goals that you have, the content you put out obviously varies by social network. If you're using Facebook, if you're using YouTube, the content you put out and your individual goals might be different. There is an opportunity to practice on various social networks. There's an opportunity to look at how others use social networks, maybe other thought leaders, how other institutions are using their social media networks, and model yourself. That sort of ties to the identify role models piece, and model yourself after those accounts. What they do well, what they don't do as well. Maybe you refrain from doing the things they don't do as well. But this practice piece could also be about creating an anonymous account to just sort of test out, certain content, to assess whether what you think might work on social media will actually work in terms of building traction, in terms of building audience, in terms of building loyalty. Be prepared to recognize that there will be a time commitment. There will be resources required, whether it's people with video editing expertise, or people who are, really talented photographers, or people who can write. There will be time and resource requirements. Be prepared to demonstrate authenticity in some of the examples we've seen, from Dr. Santa Ono. Be prepared to share accurate information. We have this ongoing issue at Seneca. I don't know if it's an issue at Durham. Whenever there's a snow day, it's not 100% clear. You've got students who come out and it's a snow day, it's official. And then the college account has to say, no, it's not a snow day. I'm sorry to disappoint. Or sometimes you even have staff members who do that, which is another sort of kettle of fish, who are proclaiming a snow day. I don't think you have the authority to proclaim. I wish you had the authority to proclaim a snow day, but you don't. I think this is correlated. Oh man, how many of you remember the example of the drunken idiot from the Toronto FC game? Was it last month or the month before? He accosts a city TV reporter, or was it CP24, on live TV, and says something really disgusting, disturbing, and loses his job. And part of the way the media was able to find almost every detail about him was the fact that he was active on 4 different social networks. I'm not saying you shouldn't be. I'm just saying you probably shouldn't simultaneously be saying stupid things on city TV at the same time while drunk. If you're going to say stupid things, do it while sober. Which leads to the think before you post. This is intuitive, it's common knowledge, but how many times have we seen people, very smart, literate, well-versed people, who don't think before they share something on social media and get in hot water for it? So, really important consideration certainly for you folks as well. Remember that it's a two-way conversation, that this shouldn't just be you putting out content, sharing links to press releases, sharing links to your own research, but not actively engaging in a conversation back with other people in your social media network. Recognizing proportionality is really, really key. It is this idea that, certainly, I'm sure Donna's run into this, if you might have 2-3 people, very vocal, very active people who are saying, let's just go back to the cafeteria, not to pick on them, the food in the caf stinks, the service is terrible, I had the worst experience of my life. So you got 3 vocal people. Is that proportionally representative of the other 97 people who were pretty okay with the service in the cafeteria? You'll always have people who veer towards the negative on social media, these so-called trolls, and they are not necessarily measurably reflective of how the general public feels. In some cases, though, proportionality works the other way. You might have a slew, 1,000 tweets on a particular topic, and that could really speak. I know the TDSB is going through this right now, the various school boards around Ontario, just getting a slew of different comments about parents who are angry, not getting the report cards they expected, that sort of thing. That's pretty measurably reflective of the tone, and the feelings that parents have about this whole, labor mess that's going on between the teachers and the province. So, proportionality works both ways there. This idea of consistency, not just, I know I struggle with this. I have again, as mentioned, sort of a baby at home. I don't have time to sit there and necessarily commit to my own social media accounts, which is bad because I'm supposed to be the one giving people advice. Be consistent. Don't leave, don't ensure that tumbleweed is not rolling through your Facebook feed and or Twitter account with regularity. This idea of vanity metrics is something I talk about. Again, very cognizant of time. I'll wrap up very quickly. Vanity metrics. You're going to think that followers, the number of followers you have, the number of likes you have, are the key to your success. Oh, I must be doing so well. I've got 1,000 followers. But it really actually, based on the research that I've conducted and based on my own observations, it's not necessarily the measure for success. It's actually, how am I doing against the goals that I initially set out? I might only have 100 followers, but maybe I set a goal of increasing, student engagement for my department. And if you've achieved that in terms of you've engaged in, 100 different really meaningful conversations with students, then really, it doesn't matter that you only have 100 followers. The measurable success you've had is more important, against the goals that you've identified, against the goals that you've set. A lot of people get caught up in the followers, but anyone can accrue a certain number of followers. Some of them might be robots. Some of them might be, the vanity metrics around followers and likes are really overblown. Measure your success against your goals. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be on every social network. Certainly you might not have the time, the energy, the ability, the resources to commit effectively to those social networks. So I think it's really about, looking at those resources, that time you have, and really committing to the ones that you can employ a sort of a fair number of resources for. And then this last piece, be prepared to pivot, be prepared to make changes as needed. Be prepared to, rethink your approach or rethink your goals. If after, a certain period of time, 3 months, 6 months, you're seeing that you're not getting the success you wanted, I think it might be time to change your approach, to change maybe the social network you're using, to change your strategy. There's a variety of different, changes you can make, and I think it's about experimentation to figure out what change works for you. Well, I'm not going to go through the challenges here. I'm going to save this maybe for the breakout session and for you guys to review the deck. Again, the activity that I had in mind and that we're going to do in the breakout session is really looking at those core questions, and we'll answer those core questions, and we'll even come up with strategies that might work for you as a faculty member to employ in your classroom or beyond. So, Jen, do we have time for a Q&A? No? Okay, well, I really should have shut up earlier. Okay, that's good. Excellent. And again, I'll focus on a Q&A for the breakout session as well. There are resources in this deck, and that's the last slide they asked me to show. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Sorry about cutting you off, but we're going to keep things on track. So his breakout session is this afternoon at 1:45, if you're interested in getting more detail and more discussion around this topic. Thank you again for a very, very good overview. Just curiosity, who's on Facebook? Who's on Twitter? Instagram? The under 21 crowd, good for you. Interesting, couple of things just to close. One of the things that Dan didn't talk about is the dark side of social media too, and you talked about the snowstorm. Well, there's the wrath of social media when we decide to stay open for snow is beyond belief. You cannot believe the type of tweets and type of information we get as a college. And on my desk, I have about 10 pages of mean tweets. You ever seen mean tweets on TV? Well, we have some classics, and I'd like to read some of them to you. I'm not going to, because they really are quite funny. But you have to have a thick skin, too, when you're on social media. And if you're interested in it, I know the breakout session will help you get into it. It is also a lot of fun. It really does give you an opportunity for a great conversation with people. And again, thanks again. We're going to have a bit of a break, and then we have another speaker for you in about, well, it's supposed to be 5 minutes, but let's take a 10, 15-minute break. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I'm an Oshawa native, and it's a pleasure to be back in Oshawa. My mother still lives here. I visit quite frequently. I live in Ottawa and have for 30 years, and I spend my time looking after 400 staff in 25 offices in Canada, from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, BC. But Oshawa's home, so it's a delight to be back. And I remember when this was E.P. Taylor's haunts with his horses when I was young, and Camp Samak was on the other side, and Durham College was a little institution, and it's changed a great deal, and it's been a pleasure for me to be able to claim the association to the place where I grew up, and to General Motors, and for thousands of people across Canada I always voluntarily, without waiting to be asked, seek to characterize Oshawa, to characterize the area, and to characterize the opportunity in this part of Ontario. So it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation and for consuming a bit of your time. So my subject, I'm an engineer, and the definition of an outgoing engineer is an engineer who looks at your shoes when he's speaking to you. So I'm a somewhat, perhaps a little more uncharacteristic engineer, or atypical, I hope. And I didn't know how large this audience would be, and I certainly didn't anticipate how large the venue would be. But if I ever get to bring the screens, I'll bring 20-foot by 20-foot ones. But some of what I'm going to discuss is not, many of you are educators. Congratulations, that's a tough job. Many of you are, I think, are recipients of the education. Congratulations, that's a tough job. I took, with interest, I listened to our previous speaker. And when I heard Don, I thought much of it ties in, or at least is consistent with what I'd like to describe about the context for leadership that exists for all of us, but exists for all of us in order to thrive within our chosen occupations. It exists for us as educators, it exists for us as professionals, as executives, and it's a different context to the one that many of us grew up in, and a failure to recognize that change in context is going to result in us not succeeding. I think much of what Don said, I'm going to try to bridge across to it. And even though I have a slideshow, and I had great difficulty, my fault, in getting it to show up here, that's why I had an extra few minutes, I was prepared to start without it and to do my 45 minutes without a slideshow, because PowerPoint is a distraction. If you've got nothing to say, it isn't going to be helped by putting up a slideshow. And this is the context for leadership in the current environment, and the one that all of those who we serve, be they students, employers, shareholders, and stakeholders, have what they regard as a not unreasonable expectation that we get that. It's one of those things that we now know, which we might have gotten away with a quarter century ago. That's only 25 years, and I've been working longer than that. But we won't get away with anymore. And as I listened to Don in real time, and with the slides turned off, I sat in that corner, and in 1 minute, literally, I want to speak about a woman named Julie Walker. I have no idea who she is, but she works at Durham College. She is a lecturer, professor at Durham College. Here's what I want to tell you about the reality of leadership. She's the only person who is rated a 5.0 out of 5.0 as a lecturer professor at the college. 60 seconds. She's characterized as an amazing lecturer, inspirational, and hilarious. She brings passion to what she does, and if she isn't passionate about it, she fakes it very well. She's hyper, said one reviewer. Durham College needs a school full of Julies. That is the bridge between what Don said and what I'd like to speak about in terms of the expectations of leadership. I don't know Julie Walker, but I do now. And in the social context, I might never meet her, but I will know that there is a woman by that name who is talented and who delivers great performance, great service, and great value into this community. And that is visible to everyone. I don't have the time, and therefore I don't have a Twitter account, because I couldn't do that list of 12 things well, because I simply couldn't do it. I could have a surrogate in my communications department do it, but that would be disingenuous, and if they ever saw through that, I'd be dead. So therefore I don't. I do have a LinkedIn account. I have 500 plus, that's the largest number, just shows a plus sign, of connections on LinkedIn. I contribute very little, and I don't give a lot of personal detail away. I learned in a court case that if information appears in a publicly available spot, you can no longer claim that that information should be privileged. So I don't supply information I don't want others to have. I let others supply to me information about themselves that they shouldn't let me have. So I draw that out as a starting point other than the one I would have started at. But here is, I'm, along with others who are in the private sector, as deep as I am as an entrepreneur, I probably employ in total 500 or 600 people in my businesses. And so if you characterize me as a rapacious capitalist bastard, I go, yeah, sometimes. It's necessary. I hope that the 400 people who work for me directly, I believe that they would want me to behave in that manner consistently in a leadership role to preserve their jobs, keep them employed. We've never had a layoff in 26 years. We've grown consistently. So therefore, the leadership that's expected of me is what I must deliver. Not the Franklin that might show up based on the engineer that was trained, but the Franklin that has to show up in order to do the job that leadership demands. This is a quote I put up on every slideshow I ever do. Will Rogers was an American aphorist. He said, even if you're on the right track, you get run over if you just sit there. When teaching young people to more senior folks, I tell them that think of me as the train behind you if you're on the right track. If you just sit there, I'm going to turn you into track lubricant, because that's the way it works. It's a competitive world for all of us. We have to bring our game. And while 25 years ago I might have rested on my laurels believing that I'm equipped and capable of succeeding and delivering value, I don't believe that that static condition exists anymore. Like Julie Walker, people are rating us, people are assessing our merit. We are being collectively looked at and seen to be relevant in the moment, and that moment gets shorter and shorter. Communicating at 140 characters and then being criticized for what you were able to condense into that, I'd say try not to say anything if you can get away with it. You might want to think of some of the recent individuals who our Chief of Defense Staff might want to yank back about 260 characters, I would think, I would hope. So even if you're on the right track, you get run over if you just sit there. I'm thinking of Julie Walker. I'm thinking of this institution, LinkedIn, of Instagram. I want to give you an example that might be relevant. My eldest son just finished his second year in a commerce program at Telfer at the University of Ottawa. He lives the absolutely perfect life living at home with all his expenses paid, I tell you. But he came to me about 3 weeks ago and asked for $50. Okay, well, that's not unusual. And I asked what for. This is unusual. He said, there's a lecture tonight. I said, you don't have a lecture on Wednesday nights. No, this is an optional lecture and it costs $50. How does that work? He said, our prof sucks. We pay a fellow who charges $50 a head to come in and reteach us what the prof was incapable of communicating. 200 kids paid $50. That's $10,000 for one evening with a tremendously talented 25-year-old who taught them what they needed to know. You may regard yourself, as I do, I've got a great job. I've got a great role. I'm in a great leadership position. The world is not waiting for us to get better. It's finding ways to get around us if we aren't. I heard that the profs at U of O hate this. As well they should. It's a threat. It's a threat when students self-identify that there's a better way to get at the learning that they want, that they determine they need, other than through the mechanism that we supply. In other words, however we may regard ourselves, we're good. I believe I'm good. I sort of think I'm good. I try to remain good. If you just stay on the right track, if you're on the right track and you just sit there, you will get run over in our rapidly changing environment. And in that regard, you need to start with leadership. Many of us, okay, perhaps not the young people who I saw who, Don was excellent, he was high-paced, he was moving fast, yet I turned to my left, and amongst the young ladies sitting to my left, one half of them were on a PDA, simultaneously doing something else. Got to tell you, there's no such thing as multitasking. You're doing one thing or the other. But at least half of them chose to look down at a handheld device instead of listening to what Don had to say, and Don was good. Very good. So that's how tough it is to capture the continuous attention. So in a leadership context, leadership is controlled by the follower, not by the leader. So we are leaders to the extent that others choose to follow us, not the way it used to be. It used to be that there was an org chart that designated us into a role, and we enjoyed the privilege and the power that came with that spot. That is vaporizing before our eyes. We now lead to the extent that you can find willing followers or create them. Julie Walker created willing followers, people willing to attest to her capability and consequently step up behind her as advocates of her role as a leader. That's the way leadership works. And as you take a look at media, you look at senators, you look at all those people who have enjoyed privilege. I live in Ottawa. I have been to events with senators. They do imagine themselves as privileged. They are entitled to their entitlements. Until it ceases to be so, because we cease to be followers. We cease to acknowledge their leadership entitlement, and we instead become demanding that they should earn it on a continuing basis, and they're incapable of that because they're ill-prepared and they're too old. The course of action taken by someone who aspires to lead, whose objective is to influence others to choose to follow. It was a long time ago that Thomas Paine said, "Lead, follow, or get out of the way." Long, long time ago. But it does remain the case. Later on, I have a quote from George Patton, who much later said, "Lead me, follow me, or get the hell out of my way." And I think that's the character of it. So, characteristics of an effective leader. This book, you can prove I'm not a university professor because I don't believe you have to have written a book for it to be great. Why would we imagine that everyone possesses the best knowledge on any subject? Do we really think that professors of calculus go back and decide to reinvent it? I would hope they don't all write the best text. I don't know if anyone read about the person who wrote the reference text on calculus. He lives north of Toronto. It's used around the world. He's a multimillionaire, and he just donated a concert hall. His home had a concert hall, and he donated it for continuing use as a concert venue. He wrote the reference text on calculus. On leadership, there are about 2,000 books in print. I can't imagine they're all right. Many of them contain mutually exclusive ideas. Here's my suggestion. If you'd been a small audience, I bring a couple boxes of these usually. I'm the biggest buyer. Amazon loves me. They send me them in hardcover saying, "You're so good at buying these, Mr. Holt-Forster." This book, The Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner, is my recommendation for the best I've found so far. And a piece of it gives rise to why I think it's credible. Aside from the fact that you can just crack it open and read something that's useful, not theoretical. Here's the thing. They have done a long-term survey. They have done a long-term survey of knowledge workers to figure out what it is that they look for in leaders. Thousands. And they keep redoing it. So they have two questions. What do you look for in a leader? Someone who you would willingly follow. Then they ask the same group that doesn't know their own answers, what do you get from the people who claim to be your leader? So it offers an interesting opportunity to look at leadership from the view of what do followers want? What do followers get? And the difference, I'm an engineer, that one minus that one equals the residual is the value opportunity. So what do we are these people. What do we say we want? If I'm going to be a willing follower, I need honesty from you as my leader. I need you to be forward-looking. I need you to inspire and motivate me, and I need you to be competent. Now, interestingly, no group ever says, I want her to be the expert in the field. Oh, no. Okay, that's fine. You can throw that in too if you want. I just want you to be honest, forward-looking, inspire and motivate me, and competent. That was interesting because often leaders migrate up into the roles they're in because they are expert in the field, and followers aren't looking for an expert. So we start with an immediate mismatch of expectations. I am the leader because I'm expert, and the people who would be our followers say, I don't care that you're expert. I just want you to be honest with me, forward-looking, inspire me, motivate me. Oh yeah, you need to be competent. So what do we say we get compared to what we say we need? We actually say, you know what? Our leaders are honest. This is good news. Our leaders are forward-looking and they're competent. Primarily because leaders tend to be older. They miss the inspire and motivate thing. Why is Julie Walker get a 5.0? The attributes they said were inspirational. They didn't say brilliant in her field. They said it was inspirational, that she provided energy and passion in her delivery, in her role. This goes to what our expectation is. There was a time, I remember it, my first job at a university lasted 1 day. I got let go on an interest rate in 1982 when interest rates went to forever. I worked in large capital projects, and when interest rates go to 20%, your capital project dies because financing becomes unavailable, and those of you in economics go, yeah, that's the end of capital. Not quite like, not capital in the 21st century, Mr. Piketty, that's a different end of capital, okay, wherever the economists are. But I lost my job in 1 day. 1 day. And I thought I was good and capable, well-educated. I'd worked for them before. It was awesome. And then I had to figure out a path forward. I did eventually. I moved to Ottawa. I was living here. And what I've learned over time and what I built a company around is the expectation that our clients have that will inspire and motivate. But when I joined Lavalin, it wasn't SNC Lavalin at the time, here was the basic leadership motto. Suck it up, you've got a job. That was it. It was deemed an unreasonable expectation that leadership should have a responsibility to motivate me. I had a job. Motivate yourself, Holt Forster. Now, young people aren't buying, folks. They're not buying in. The subjects of our effort as leaders are saying, great, Mr. Holt Forster, you're I hope they're saying, honest, forward-looking, reasonably competent, but you also owe me inspiration and motivation. So what do? For 10 years, every new employee from across Canada comes with me to Wakefield, Quebec, where I conveniently own an interest in a very nice 41-room hotel. Anyway, inn and conference facility, nice spa, ladies. But anyway, I bring everyone from an admin assistant to a vice president comes as an equal, and for 3 days, I teach. So the CEO shows up, we take great care of them, they're well fed, I come to dinner with them, and I teach every person what I believe about the business they work in. I get back note after note after note from people saying, I've worked in 6 different places. I never met the CEO. I've worked in 6 different places. No one put a minute into training me. They just sat me down and said, work. I said, I win. In the competition for talent, in the competition for students, I win. My approach, which recognizes the desire of this workforce to be inspired and motivated, says, that showed to us evidence of your interest. How interested can I really be in 1 out of 450 people? I'm not good with names. That doesn't help. But I can be interested enough to show up for 3 days, 2 to 3 times a year, with everybody. VP, if they're in the C-suite, they all sit together. There's no differentiation. The curriculum's all the same. Because I paid attention to this even if I'm too old to actually have imagined it. It's the way it goes. If you just, even if you're on the right track, you just sit there, you'll get run over by the train behind you. So the opportunity is to inspire and motivate. Now this is interesting because many of us go, oh man, well, that's going to motivate them. Well, it's an interesting thing. Actually, motivation isn't about, in many ways, it isn't about you finding the perfect inspiration and motivation for the individual. It's to embody in the way in which you act that which has the potential to be motivational and inspirational. That's all. Just give hope a chance. Just give it a chance. Extract yourself from the current vernacular and imagine that I own the inspiration file. My name is Julie Walker. What department do you suppose Julie Walker works in? Communications. That's good. She ought to. But I think it's fantastic because I looked at it last. I wonder where she works. Communications. Oh, there's a surprise. The lady's got it down. When a person said, I don't know whether she's sincere or not, maybe she's just faking it, but who cares? So, you've got to be intentional about it. I call it intentional leadership because it's stepping back from the domains in which we are expert, or we deem ourselves to be knowledgeable, or others have selected us for our knowledge build. And we step back and go, I'm going to be purposeful, willful, intentional in adding to that or supplementing that expertise or that knowledge with dispositional, largely dispositional habits, which influence people to see me as inspiring them, to turn them into followers. Now, as unlikely as it is with this group, I'll do a couple slides. I'm going to then walk you through something which I've worked with. I'm not an educator, but I have thousands of people, and I'll tell you a little secret about it in a minute because it makes senior audiences laugh. So leaders, what's the difference between a leader and a manager? A leader asks why in order to compare the merits of the how and the what. Managers ask how and what, having been told why. Leaders get rewarded, managers get paid. If you can migrate yourself into Julie Walker's spot, I would say, Julie, start going to other institutions. They're going to hire you in a heartbeat and leverage up your expectations. Because the HR groups doing recruitment are going to go straight to Rate My Prof, and they're going to find the Julie Walker at 5.0 and say, hi, I'm with Seneca College, Julie, we need you. It's a tough gig, guys. It's a very difficult gig. And so even though we'd like not to imagine that, and I agree, I'm an engineer, I believe that the services we provide as consultants are data-rich environments. They're analytical. Many of them are deterministic if subjected to enough analysis. But so what? If the followers say, I follow somebody who inspires and motivates me, I lose if I don't deliver. Person who knows how will always have a job. Person who knows why will always be their boss. Ever heard the expression that A students end up working for C students? It's because the C students don't get advanced because they're experts. They have to make up for it. They become better communicators. They get good at faking it. They're inspirational, motivational. They become great public speakers. And all those A students who became expert remained expert. And it ended up working for the C students. Oh, it so hurts in engineering. It so hurts the engineers. Engineers are so pained by this. The great engineers go, how can I be working for him? It's a tough life, but it's reality. You are. We are working for her, for him. So I'm going to offer a little short course, extremely short. I commit a great deal of effort to professional development. I've taken acting lessons. What engineers take acting lessons? Except for those in Little Theater. I'm not in that. I've taken acting lessons for one express purpose, to be able to be comfortable holding the mic. I've taken acting lessons in order to be able to accept the invitation. You're speaking to an audience. Okay, fine, when? And forget to ask how many people. What's the difference? And then the PowerPoint show, my fault, didn't show up, and it looked like I was going to do it without the slides. I said, that's okay, I'll do it without the slides. I want to test your bravery. How many of you want to show up for a 45-minute lecture with 300 strangers and forget your slide deck? No, me either, by the way. But I was prepared to. So I'm going to offer you something here, which I do I put a good portion of a day that we're together with my new staff, we put into this and some related things. We do an elevator pitch. I've sat with CAOs of college and university institutions and asked them, go ahead, tell me what I need to know about Durham College. And then gone person by person, and as I said, forget it, that's not good enough. You took too long. You gotta be kidding, every college is that. They all laugh, and then they laugh at each other and realize They can't state the value proposition of their institution in 30 seconds. They need a short course to tell me about the value of the institution. So I teach that to a range of audiences. If you've never done it in your department, realize you're competing with another department. If you bump into me in an elevator at a conference and I say, so what do? I don't want to know my name is and I. That's all. I don't care at all. I can read your name on your card. I want to know, what difference do you make? What difference does Durham College make? What difference does Ms. Walker make? This leadership role is about understanding the context in which you deliver a message. So here's one, a short course on doing this. Now there are young people here, so for the young people who shouldn't have reasonably expected to be good at this, absorb this. It can make the difference between you get a job or you don't. If you get good at this, you're more employable. If you can be an advocate, a person willing to stand up and speak, you're more employable, and it doesn't matter what you do otherwise. Your ability to do this one thing, public speaking, or to give a PowerPoint presentation, can differentiate you from the pack. And that's what we're up to. Leaders need to differentiate themselves, pull themselves forward, and the ability to be articulate, to be comfortable with your own proposition, to give voice to that which you believe, is fundamental to being differentiated as a leader and being afforded the chance in your career to step out in front and say, come on, you folks, follow me. So I'll give you a 5-step short course in the leadership attributes of a public speaker. Essential power. Oh, well, actually, I deleted the actual one. This came from my desktop. It's 80% style and 20% content. I'm going to leave that there now. I had deleted it because I wanted to show some respect for educators. True. I deleted it in the slide deck that I thought I had carried. I left it in the one that was still sitting on my top of my desk. Being compelling is more important than being agreed with. Experts want to tell you until you agree. A leader just wants to tell you until you understand. I don't need to be agreed with. I've moved on from that. I would like to be compelling. I'd like to be memorable. I grant you the discretion of whether or not you agree with me. When you're trying to influence as a speaker, and for all the knowledge we have of how little most people want to get up and swap with me to have the mic, you need to just realize the audience wants you to succeed. How many people came here this morning going, I hope the whole thing sucks? There's, you brought an ice pick. No, so my view of any opportunity to be a speaker is the audience wants to enjoy it. The audience is with you, well, until you betray them. But otherwise, the audience is with you. And as a leader, your audience, your followers want you to succeed in your leadership role. They're not seeking to betray you. They want you to be Julie Walker at 5.0, folks. Their aspiration is the same as yours, that you will do well, you'll make their jobs better. So, here you go. This is the shortest course I've ever offered. A 5-point process to turn yourself into a compelling public speaker. And use it every time you touch PowerPoint. Number 1, you've got to look at people. You've always got to look at people. I don't care if you chose to sit in the back row. That's right, you. Because it's always curious how in really large venues, and then you know what most people do then? They go like this. They move their head from side to side. Because they're going, he could be looking at me. To see whether my head shifts. You can look deep into an audience, and usually the audience will go, oh my God, I think he's looking at me. That's right, that would be you, sir, with the glasses who just knocked his head. You got a nice beard. So looking at people creates a connection. And when you speak to one person at a time, even though the rest of the audience you're not speaking to, they realize it's a conversation. Every lecture is a conversation. Everyone has an opportunity to make a connection with one person so the rest can go, he's not talking to the walls, he's not rotating around speaking to the banners, he's talking to someone in the room. And that changes your tone because you're more likely to implore a person's engagement if you're looking at them because they look back. And you courteously don't move on until you're finished the sentence because that's rude. If I'm speaking to you and she can go, wait a second, you weren't done with me yet. So as honestly simple as speak to one person at a time. Look at somebody. Get invested. We're trying to turn them into willing followers. They're not a chain gang. Those profs who aren't earning the 10 grand, they don't get it. They ought to be investing in a relationship when they speak. After all, the students don't learn everything by going to the 3-hour lecture. They go and take the textbook home and have to read it. They have to do the study work. They have to get together in groups. One sentence to one person. When you're done it, move on. By the way, that makes this a lot easier, because then you're not worried about 326 people. It's just you and me having a chat for a moment before I have a chat with somebody else. And that makes the whole thing of standing up here a lot easier, makes you more compelling. And remember, even if you're on the right track, you get run over. If you just sit there, and all you have to hope is that the person in front of you is the one who slows down, you'll run them over. That's my plan. That's been my career strategy. Slow down, I run you over. However, I also say that ours is a lifeboat. There are 426 people on it. I absolutely protect my 426 people. You choose to leave, I'll drown you with a paddle. Hands. Okay, so as soon as I arrived, I asked at the desk, good sound system, by the way. Congratulations for one of the best big room sound systems I've ever been in. You can actually hear the speaker. Congratulations. Well done. I'll bet you don't have many speakers who thank you. I didn't think so. So, you want to be a good leader? Thank the people who never get thanked for doing a good job. All you have to do is be that much better than the other guy. How about your hands? Allow me for a minute. Now, this is a very, very effective speaker. I'll do this. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. There we go. Can you still hear me? I'm not surprised. Because it is possible to speak in a decent room. When you're speaking, one of my slides says, you have the obligation to speak loud enough to be heard by every person in the room. It's your obligation. Their obligation is not just to try to hear you. Your obligation is to speak so as to be heard. So if I go to lecture and I'm your professor, speaking more, I know exactly what you think your role is, man. Speak up so that I can hear you. And hands me this. Gentlemen, if you are ever going to lecture, your hands are doing this. There are at least a dozen women going, what the hell? So here's the thing. I did go up and ask whether they had a lapel mic. I would have used a lapel mic because to get invested in my message is to let my hands loose. Keep them above my waist. Use them to animate the language. They give you a physicality that says, you're invested in it. Julie Walker may be faking it, so my eyes. So the fact is, getting invested is evidence of your enthusiasm. Fake it to make it if you have to. But you'll be left behind otherwise, because we have a discerning audience of young people with expectations. Unsated expectations will be met by another institution. When I picked a university, I was locked down, and the University of Waterloo could do to me whatever it wished. Not anymore. Students move. If they're not getting the education they like, they move on. I saw when I put in Durham College, Google's first reference was to a complaint by some person. It's one of these, is it an outlier, saying, I would never take that program. The first thing I saw, I went, wow. Of course, I went, so what? Okay? It managed to get the first hit. The person understands how search engine optimization works. So okay, fine. I moved on to take a look at rate my prof. Get your hands up. Get invested. This is small and this is big, and you know what? This is uninteresting. And if I'm offending any professors, too bad. Really, it is too bad. Your feet. Now, I do this for young people who have to be public speakers, because young people, old people too, okay, a lectern. Lecterns are horrible, but they're really good if you're nervous, because you can push your midriff against the lectern edge and stop this from happening. You know why we do this? We do this like we're rocking ourselves to sleep. We think we're the baby. We do it because anything that has a nice, slow rhythm, so therefore people who go like this when they're speaking, that's an attempt by their body to go, rock-a-bye Franklin. So, touch your midriff to the lectern, lean against the desk, touch a chair. But otherwise, unless you're really comfortable about walking around, stand still. It's otherwise distracting. Still use your hands, still speak up. Get engaged, be involved. Think of it as somebody's paying for your time, and usually it isn't you. We owe them value. And I'd like them to be a follower that shows up for the next lecture. My son routinely tells me, I think, why aren't you in school? That's the problem with living at home. No one ever asked me at Waterloo when I was from Oshawa if I went to a class, but your dad's home, your mom's home, you've got the lecture schedule, you want the car. The parents get to say, why aren't you in school? Because, Dad, the prof is useless. I'll pay the 50 bucks. Okay, son, 3 down, 2 to go. And it is as easy as this. Speak to be easily heard by the person in the room with the worst hearing. Speak from down here. Don't speak from up here. When I go in and I hear a lecturer going, okay, and the next thing we're going to do is I go, wow, there's commitment. There's commitment. So it is no less effort and much easier on the throat to speak from down here, and if you go and take acting lessons, they'll come and poke you in the belly to see if you've got your midriff thoroughly clenched, because that's the only way you can shove your diaphragm up against your lungs in order to keep going like this for hours. And you build that vocal strength on the back of working at it. Ah, there's a surprise. Practice makes perfect. Project your voice from deep within you. Try to use the baritone portion of your vocal range. People are influenced by baritone voices. Don't blame me. I'm just a messenger. Don't blame me. Apparently, they're also influenced by men who walk slowly and deliberately. Professors seem to have that down. Pacing seems to be an essential characteristic. So, a deep voice. For women, speak at the bottom of your vocal range and don't let your voice go up when you're trying to offer emphasis. Speak like Hillary Clinton. Let your voice go down when you want to offer emphasis. My name is Franklin Holtforster. It doesn't go, my name is Franklin Holtforster, because I don't need you to agree. So using a declarative close, which is a voice of authority, is not accidental. Those people take lessons and they get better and better at it. When you're the Secretary of State, you don't want to ask Saddam Hussein. You want to be telling Mr. Hussein, we are going to punt you out of office. Not, we're going to punt you out of office? Maybe? Perhaps? I don't need your concurrence. Exaggerate your emphasis and inflection. This is a tough one, but you've got a group to influence. It's going to take more than the amount of effort you invested in a kitchen table. And therefore, you've got to exaggerate. You've got to be bigger. You've got to want it. You've got to realize it's about them. It's not about you. And so the ability to be effective in a lecture environment is to say it's about them, and I'm going to move her disposition. I'm going to let her learn. I'm going to invest the energy required to let her, yeah, you again, her learn. 5 down. Style. Who has sat in a lecture where you swear the person was reading from War and Peace? The fact that you're at the front and you can organize massively long sentences that involve semicolons and conditional phrases, you've got to remember, the audience has to keep up. Use short sentences. I use as an example when I teach public speaking with individuals coming up, I get out Don Quixote by Cervantes, and I just flipped the thing open. One time I flipped it open to a sentence that was 237 words long. I said, this is your speech. Good luck. Short, perfunctory, free. Have a good thesaurus. So, don't fear silence, embrace it. Now, this is one that I've watched from, not from audiences, but by being an audience. And I realized that when you stop speaking, everyone is very quiet. And they're all wondering, what's next? So embracing silence in a presentation, if you want a compelling presentation, just before you give your punchline, don't hurry to it, shut up. And all of us are ready to receive your compelling message. Whoops. Sorry. Now, I was going to take the rest out. What times? You have to be, when do I have to be out of here? Like back? When am I done? Oh. Okay, here's the secret. I teach public speaking to a variety of audiences. Every year I teach a grade 7 and 8 class. I use the same slides as I use for my VP suite. Why change the slides? Being good at it is about being good at it. I have slides next on how to email intelligently. I use the same slides for grade 7 and 8 students as I do for people who get paid $200,000+ a year. Why change it? When I do an elevator pitch, I've had CAOs who, a room with $2 million of salary in the room. It's the same one I use for young people who have just taken their first career job. Why change it? The story isn't different. It isn't different because we're more senior in our roles. It's the same story to a more reticent audience. The young people suck it up. They go, oh, I get that. After all, my intention span's 140 characters long. Sorry, guys. Therefore, I'm going, I'll give you only 140 character bites. I'll keep my sentences really short. We'll be compelling. We'll move fast. It'll be loud enough that you can hear it. You'll be disinclined to look down at that PDA because I'm going to be more interesting than the most recent message you receive. And since you're getting a message every, 25 seconds, 30 seconds? Ladies, 30 seconds? Okay, I've got a 30-second window of opportunity to do something that's interesting from a 57-year-old that beats the 19-year-old guy who sent you that other thing. Hey. Practice to eliminate verbal bridges. I work very hard to eliminate. I hate this thing, actually. Can you turn the speaker off? People who are self-aware enough not to say you like, and, but, like. I go, I think you're ready for a professional environment. Welcome aboard. If you're still in the like, maybe a couple more years would help before I offer you a $60,000, $70,000, or $80,000 a year job. I'm in consulting. My clients are not going to want to hear and like. Tough life, huh? Yeah, it is. So, email is intentional. I won't show it to you, but if you don't imagine it, many people only know us if I avoid Facebook, which is, I do, Twitter, too much effort. But if I avoid those, and I am on LinkedIn, then email in a professional environment is a primary means by which you will be known. It's very interesting. I'll take more than 5 minutes. Sorry. The email's not the small stuff. Your leadership, you are your email. It's like an avatar. When you hit send, it's like you're putting your imprimatur on the words you've just transmitted. So I take no email lightly. I never hit send without going, in my head, it's about you. I'm sending for your benefit because I wish to communicate with you. Have I effectively pruned this down to what you need to know what I need to say? Every time, no exceptions. Oh, by the way, every email, I do this with people. You got to be really brave. Would you be willing to swap PDAs, and I'll open my sent items folder and show it to you, and you show me your sent items folder, and I'll claim that I know everything I need to know about you by how you communicate on your sent items. And I'll promise that you'll know everything you need to know about me. If you would be afraid to hand me your PDA because of the way you communicate, the way you craft email, the way you go informal, the way you use language, you're missing an opportunity to influence. I really will wrap up. This is an old theory. Oh, young people weren't born when this was created. MBWA. Throw your hand up if you remember MBWA. Way to go. Way to go. I hate to say it, but that means that you are not in your 20s. So MBWA is management by walking around. So how about leadership by walking around? It's like this. The notion was that when we got fax machines and voicemail, what are those? People said, oh, now with fax machines and voicemail, we're not connecting directly anymore. Fax machines and voicemail. What does that say about today? So they came up with a management theory of management by walking around. There were books on this to teach managers to get up from their desks even though they didn't have to. Where are we today? It is 100 times worse, and the opportunity is 100 times larger, because the differentiated leader wants to see his people. She wants to connect, because that personal connection is a differentiator as compared to that 19-year-old may be interesting, but he's just in a sea of 19-year-olds. If he shows up and says, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" he's differentiated. So get up, be a leader, get out in front, meet your folks. So George Patton said, "Lead me, follow me, or get the hell out of my way." I offer that inspiration and motivation are the differentiators of leadership, and for a younger generation, the prerequisites to turning those who appear below you in the org chart or to whom you have to deliver service from those who would be compelled to those who will voluntarily step up. I think that Don's presentation ahead of mine, and by the way, I'm remembering your surname for that illegal game of Scrabble because it's got 2 Z's in it, wherever Don is. Dan Zayance, that's worse than Holt Forster. So I just encourage you, please be aware that we, in our capacity as leaders, have to convert people into willing followers, that what they're asking for is inspiration. They're asking for us to bring them inspiration, to bring them motivation. And as much as you might imagine that they should just suck it up, buttercup, that isn't enough anymore. It's never going to be enough again. The speed of communication is killing it. And those of us will either become dinosaurs or we're going to become track lubricant. My intention is, to the end of my career, to remain viable as the leader of a big organization with a lot of employees, to protect their employment, and therefore I demand of everybody that they're familiar with this, that they incorporate it into the way they behave, and that they embody it in the way they engage with the world, not just with a mic in their hand, but in the way they communicate. It is always the case that when a whole bunch of people commit a piece of their time for me to hector them, I beg the indulgence. I thank you for your indulgence. I've appreciated the time and the opportunity. I did drive all the way from Ottawa this morning, and I am driving back to make it in time for my son's graduation ceremony, but it was fantastic to be at Durham College. Thank you.